think we came here to do a nice little fun question and answer episode, but why don't we take a moment to talk about what you just witnessed? I think it's worth discussing.
All right.
So, I mean, I'll start with the part of the story that I know. We show up to the studio, which is in downtown Los Angeles. I, like an idiot, forgot my keys at home. Rabichka, hold just a little bit. I'm going to go run and grab my keys. And then I'm pulling back up to the spot, and it's police everywhere. Everyone's walking with their phones, and I couldn't see around the corner, and my heart jumped into my throat. I was like, what happened?
My heart's still in my throat right now.
I thought something happened to you, truly, because it was right there. Everyone's shooting. There's tons of cops. And I just like I was getting real. I literally threw my car into park in the street, walked out just to make sure. And then I saw you standing with your phone too. And I'm like, okay. And then I started to understand what was going on. So what happened while I was gone?
You don't see this very often, but I was sitting in my car waiting for Greg to come back to get his keys so we can go into the studio. And literally across the street from me, I saw a woman get taken out of her car by...
So was she at a stop, or did the car get pulled over?
Car got pulled over, it looked like.
So she got pulled over.
She got pulled over, and she basically got put in handcuffs, detained, and I start seeing quick
by the police, or
no, not by the police. It said police, and then it said ICE.
But the guys with the masks.
Guys with masks, and basically saw this little woman, being detained and handcuffs being put behind her back, and then I saw what looked like a gentleman on the street get right in front of the police officers, the ICE police officers, recording, screaming at him.
Well, by this point, other people had gathered.
Yeah, other
too,
people
right?
are there. It's now a whole commotion happening.
And
people are screaming. People are honking. This is right here
outside your car.
Outside my car. I'm now getting out of my car.
At which point do you get out of your car?
I get out of my car and I start recording. Also, what's going on? Watching this entire incident ensue in front of my face, and I'm like, is this what I think I'm seeing? Like what I saw, on the news a couple weeks ago, and this is what was happening. And ultimately, at the end of the day, this woman was put in handcuffs and was put into a car, and now what seems like tons of onlookers and bystanders are now screaming a lot of harsh words at these police officers. And there's this one guy who is literally filming, and I can't tell because the way how he was screaming at these police officers, I couldn't tell if he was related to this woman or he was a family protecting her. But I guess he was protecting her and was getting in the police officer's face. And I think I saw the police officer kind of push him away. And then
they were getting pretty rough with everyone.
They were getting pretty rough. Yeah. They pushed him away, and then the guy ended up throwing a punch in the police officer's face. And
the police officer or the ICE officer?
The ICE officer.
Oh.
And ultimately what ended up happening is that now there was a bum rush of 5 ICE police officers, grabbed him, threw him to the ground, and he was literally, I think he got tased, and they might have put pepper spray in his face. Oh. And now
5 guys against 1.
Yeah, and in the meantime, this other woman is being put into a car, and now it seemed like the guy who, and by the way, now the guy who's on the ground, he basically said, I'm an American citizen, but because I think he got rough with the ICE police officers, they now had to put him away, and I saw him it was just a very disturbing thing to watch, the whole thing. And then as this is going on, I want to say there are now 50 people on the street with their phones, including myself, shouting, screaming.
This is when I pulled up.
Screaming a lot of obscenities at these police officers, and this all happened within 15 minutes. I have it all on my phone, and now that I'm talking about it, I feel better. But as you described it, my throat, I felt like my breath was up in my throat, like I couldn't breathe to watch this. And like it's very surreal in the sense that like this is happening in front of my face. Like how is this happening? And couldn't believe that I was being an eyewitness to watching this. And is this my home? Is this really happening on the streets of LA? What's really happening? And I don't understand.
And then they just drove away. I saw that too. Like as fast as it all started. I mean, I was gone for what, 10 minutes?
It all took place in 15 minutes. But there were helicopters flying above them. The regular LAPD came and they were trying to
maintain the crowd.
Crowd, because the crowd is really up in arms at this point, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah.
We're watching a guy getting pummeled. They're not necessarily see what took place, but this man is defending this woman from basically being thrown into a car. And again, I don't know if ICE police officers were following her. All I saw is I jumped out of my car and it looked like ICE were grabbing this woman, what looked like from a car, and then taking her away. And
so I'm on so this is happening on 9th. I'm on Main, and I'm trying to turn, and the car in front of me, I think, was related to that woman because they pulled over later, and they were asking me, they're like, what car is that? And I'm like, which one are you talking about? Because I got out of my car because I was worried. I didn't know what was happening. I was worried about you. And then I saw what was happening, and I was like, oh my God, this is way bigger. And I don't know. I didn't even know what was going on. And she was like, tell me what's going on. Like, what car is that? So I walk over and I tell them what car it is. And she's like, oh my God, that's my family. And I was like, oh my God, what can I do? And they're like, well, I don't know. And it just all happened so quickly. I didn't even know. Quickly.
And
I couldn't even get in there because and there were people throwing rocks at the car. And what was really interesting is they didn't engage with the other people. I mean, they engaged with the guy who hit him in the face, but they just got in their cars and drove away.
Well,
rocks and all.
They were. I was literally watching this man as close to you and I with my phone getting beaten up, and the ICE police officers were watching us getting very close, and then they started coming closer to us, and there was a woman in front of me who was literally like in their face, and he started swatting.
I saw that.
He started swatting her phone and basically like saying, I'm warning you, back off, stay here, back off. And that's when I don't think they were there at will to deal with the public that way. So that's when the police had to come in. And then the police ended up coming in and they were taking out their batons with people, again, who were standing right next to me and basically saying, you need to move to the alleyway, and if you don't, I'm warning you.
Like, what does that even mean?
I'm warning you. And basically the guy's like, you're all tough now because you have a baton in your hand. I'm not allowed to stand here with my phone and record this. He's basically saying, I need you to step away from this scene and back off.
Right.
So that's what was happening. And a lot of people were just saying, leave our neighborhoods, get out of here.
They were trying to block off the street.
You're not
right?
wanted. This person, you're really, we're living here. This is our home, and amongst a lot of other harsh words.
It sounds like you're cleaning it up a little bit.
I'm cleaning it up a lot. So I guess the lesson here is that
how do you feel about
how
this
do I
from
feel about
just
this?
Like a perspective.
I'm the rabbi. I'm usually supposed to have answers here,
but just like a spiritual perspective. Like, what is the?
Why did I need to see this? And what was the
Had I not forgotten my keys, we would have seen none of that.
We would have been up in the building 2 minutes prior to that. So you forgot your keys. I was still in my car waiting for you to come, holding your parking spot behind me, and within 2 minutes of you leaving, this incident happened.
That's insane.
So the question is that why did I have to see this? I don't know. I'm going to try to be rabbinic right now and have some wisdom to share. I don't know if I could really, truly have such a poignant answer because I'm still trying to process this and decompress this. Yeah. But I would say is that this whole idea and notion of compassion is coming to my mind right now. And what does it mean to be compassionate? And what does it mean to be, what does compassion really mean? It means, or what does empathy really mean? And I think right now, in my mind, I'm so busy going on with my day-to-day life. And I'm focused on what we'd say my dalid amot, my 4 to 6 feet around me. I was about to do a podcast, and I'm completely oblivious or unaware of what other people are going through in this world. And it's not that I don't care, but
it's just you have your own problems that you're constantly dealing with.
I have my own problems in my own life, and I'm dealing with my own stuff. And I just got brought in to somebody else's conflict, problems of what they're dealing with. And therefore, does that now become my conflict, my problems, my issue?
It's interesting.
Because I could still just go on and focus.
But now this is in your 4 to 6 feet.
It's within my 4 to 6 feet, and it was thrust
into your 4 to 6 feet.
Into my 4 to 6 feet. And therefore, as a conscious individual, I need to now ask myself the question, what did God want me to learn from this?
Because it wasn't like it just happened. The way this all unfolded with me forgetting the keys and having to run home and all of that stuff, it's almost like it feels very fate driven. Like it needed to happen in that way in some way.
And I'm going to get, I as a person who tries to live with God on a day-to-day basis as much as I can, am I really, really, truly living with the precepts, the foundations that I'm living with God? And
what would
and hold on, and it happens to also be that, like, I'm just going to share this with you, is that today is actually the 2nd anniversary of my father passing away today.
Wow.
So I was just on the phone with my brother. He just said to me, he's in New York right now.
He was the one you were on the phone with when we pulled up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said to me, ironically enough, he said, I want to spend some time in New York because I'm finding that LA is a tough place to be right now. And I can only assume why he said LA is a tough place because of what's been going down in LA. And then, ironically enough, less than 2 minutes later, what he was talking about of why it happened right in front of me on my father's 2-year anniversary of him passing away. And I'm focused on...
He said that right before that happened?
Yes.
Wow.
I was so focused on my life. I'm when on the anniversary of somebody passing in Judaism, we do something where we say Kaddish. Mm-hmm. So I went to a prayer service this morning, and I led the prayer services in front of everybody, and I said Kaddish, which is basically you ensure that the soul on his anniversary is elevated. So I said Kaddish for my father and his soul being elevated. So I'm focused on me. I'm focused on my mitzvot. I'm focused on my commandments that I need to do for me. And I've been so focused on Israel. I've been so focused on this war. I don't know what the date is, June 25th, June 24th?
24th.
Today's June 24th. For those who don't know, time in history is that for the last 12 days, there's been a war between Israel and Iran, and a war, and America got involved.
And now there's a ceasefire, but
now there's a ceasefire
as of yesterday, broken, but we don't know yet.
And as a Jew, that's been my focus, to be focused on that. And while this has been going on, that my focus has been on the bigger picture of Israel, and in a way, the Jewish people, i.e. my family. I look at Jews as my family.
Right.
I am we have a tendency that it says it in the Jewish wisdom that one needs to take care of themselves first. They need to ensure that they're taking care of themselves. And then once you've taken care of yourself, you expand outwards.
Right, because if you
take care of your
Right.
immediate family.
If you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of others? Right? It's like
Correct.
to put your mask on before someone
Correct.
else, right? Just to make
Put
sure
your
that
mask
you
on
can
as
help.
the plane is going down.
Yeah.
You put your mask on first. So I got to take care of myself. Then who do I take care of after? My wife, my 4 kids. Who do I take care of after that? My extended family, my mom, my dad, my siblings. Who do I take care of after that? I take care of my community, my constituents who follow me, my students. Right. Who do I take care of after that? People that I don't know who are part of my Jewish family, who are beyond. And it keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But we got to take care of ourselves first. So I'm taking care of myself, and I'm concerned about all the Jews, Israelis who are getting missiles, who have to leave their homes and go into bomb shelters, because that, in a way, is an extension of who I am. So as I'm talking this out right now, I'm thinking about, wow, I've been thinking about my family this entire time, but I just witnessed somebody
else's family.
Somebody who is not my family as a Jew, who just got completely demoralized, who just got completely roughed up, who got completely harassed, beaten up, for them being who they are.
And for them doing what you do every day and try to take care of their family.
Correct.
I mean, that's the thing, is that as you're talking, I'm sitting here listening, thinking, okay, so it's like, it's almost, you feel that you and your family, your greater family, your community, the Jewish people, are under essentially an existential risk right now all over the world with the rise of anti-Semitism, this war.
Physical war.
Yeah, everything, right? Meanwhile, there's a whole nother grand family who is also facing an existential risk.
A different family than mine.
Facing a similar existential
different family
risk,
than mine, but what is our common bond? Humanity.
We're all people.
We're all people. We're humanity. So what was God telling me? I'm so worried about my family. And again, we're supposed to take care of myself, my family. Those are the priority. But does that mean I'm not allowed to have compassion and feel sad and feel...
I don't think so.
And feel this sense of despair when I just watched another family member get hurt?
Because that's the thing, is, right? We're all part of the grand family. But
that person is not Jewish, but I completely had a moral dilemma that I just experienced and I just witnessed and said, okay, now how do I compartmentalize this?
How do I help these people?
How do I help these people while also still helping myself and my people
and you
and me and in a way try to reconcile, okay, I'm helping myself and my people, but also have compassion, empathy, and try to extend beyond my Dalet Amos, my 4 to 6 feet, and be there for somebody else who's not part of my family, and say, what can I do to try to be there for this person who just got stripped away of maybe her freedom and has now been detained in a car.
I mean, essentially kidnapped, right? We don't really know. Unfortunately, we have no idea. They've just been taking people and putting them places and detaining them with no due process, nothing.
Right.
So they got kidnapped.
And here's the thing, is that up until this point,
we just witnessed a legal kidnapping.
Up until this point, Rabbi Mordechai Teller has not thought about this at all. Or I've been too worried about my own family.
Yeah.
And now God seemingly put me witness to this. And I think God, if I had to do a quick, what did this mean? I need to learn more compassion. I need to be more aware. I need to not be just so flippant about what's taking place in my home, because I do live here in Los Angeles.
You're born and raised.
I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, and I'm so worried about my family in Israel. I'm so worried about my Jewish people that I'm also kind of been turning a little bit of a blind eye and saying this is not really my fight right now. Other people are involved in this fight, and I need to worry about my fight because that has to do with me.
But the fight for compassion is a human fight.
And that's what I'm acknowledging, that God needed me to learn a little bit more compassion, and not to beat myself up, but maybe I've been more not as aware and not as caring about my fellow man as much as I could be. So
Right.
now that I saw this, what do I do? And again, you and I try not to get so political on this podcast.
There's enough politics.
There's enough politics, and we try to talk more about humanity, and don't want to get political here, but I do have a dilemma a little bit.
But I think this is what you do. What you're doing right now is exactly what you do. You know, you talked about, what was the term for the 4 to 6 feet?
Daled Amos.
Daled Amos. And what
Daled is the fourth letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and every letter in the Hebrew alphabet corresponds to a number. So Aleph is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph corresponds to 1. Bet is the second letter in the Hebrew alphabet, corresponds to 2. Gimel is the third, and Daled is the fourth. Daled Amot, an amma is a measurement. It's 2 feet. So when I say Daled Amos, 4 times 2 is 8 feet. And that's typically a measurement. We stay within our Daled Amot. We stay within our 4 to 6 feet.
But I think
6 to 8 feet, excuse me.
I think that this is then what you do. You have this community, like you said, that respects you and listens to you and takes your teaching seriously. And we intended today to sit and answer some questions that people submitted to us via WhatsApp and Instagram and things like that. And we have those questions. But I think this is what that activism could at least begin to look like on your end. Because now all of these people who may be watching our podcast, who just like you, have been really focused on our family in Israel and around the world and in America, are now being asked to tune into something a little different. Coming from a person of leadership in their community saying, hey, everyone.
Yeah.
That lives at least here in Los Angeles, but the fight extends beyond Los Angeles. ICE isn't an LA thing.
Yeah.
It's all over the country.
Like I was saying, that my cleaning lady, my nanny, who's been my nanny, who has watched my children, we've had her for 10 years. She has not come to our house for the last two weeks. She's too afraid to leave her house. I said, can I go and pick you up? And she said, I'm not leaving my house.
I get it.
And, and I thought, again, it's so far away, even though it's in Los Angeles. This is so far away. This is not my problem. Missiles being thrown in Israel is closer to me. Is more my problem.
Or at least
feels like it's more my problem. Or stuff that's anti-Semitic rallies that are taking place is more my issue. And I've doubled down as a human being, as a Jew, in that arena. That has been my if we're going to be honest here, that has been what has been on my Instagram stories.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, okay, we're the minority as Jewish people, and there's so much hatred towards us, and that if we're not going to step up for ourselves, who's going to do it for us? As it says in Pirkei Avot, we've quoted Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers. Our great sages had sayings, and our great sages said, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me at the end of the day? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Implying that at the end of the day, we're the only ones that can really help ourselves.
Okay.
And we can't, the next statement also says, as part of that, if I'm only for me, who am I? if I'm only for myself, then who am I? Meaning that I can't be so focused on myself that at the end of the day, part of who we are as human beings is to extend beyond the selfishness, extend beyond the Daladamos and say, you have to give. You have to have compassion. You have to have empathy towards people and things beyond yourself. So yes, at the end of the day, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? So at the end of the day, so initially I thought, well, you know what? If I'm not going to stand up for me being Jewish, nobody will stand up for me being Jewish. But I might have taken that too far. And I think that I saw a real life glimpse of that if I'm only for myself,
then who are you?
Then who am I?
Then what do you stand outside of yourself?
Where do I stand out beside myself is that I honestly do think that God told me that you've now maybe been too focused on yourself, that you haven't taken the time to have compassion towards really the essence of who you are, that you are a balanced person. You are a giving person. You were raised in Van Nuys, California, outside of people who are not just necessarily Jewish. I was the only white kid raised with a bunch of Latin Americans and Hispanics and Filipinos. And I went to a Catholic high school. And I was the only standout Jew in high school. But all my friends were not Jewish. Right. And now I become super Jew. I'm a rabbi, and I'm like all about Jews.
Let's pause for a second there, because I don't know. I think that if you distill down Gavin Mordechai Teller, I don't think that you're just a super Jew all about Jews. I think you're a community leader. It happens to be that you are Jewish, and so the community that you are leading is the Jewish community because it makes sense. But in the 8 years that I've known you, I think that no matter what community you would be a part of, whether it's Jewish or otherwise, whether it's Jewish or LA or the human race as a whole, you're a community leader. You take communities and you give them a sense of belonging, and you give them a sense of purpose, and you help them to understand better about themselves what they are trying to learn. So that would be, sorry, someone walked by. That's what I think. And so I feel like if you were to truly distill, I understand the idea of getting so focused because there's so much conflict in your community that you have to be focused on that. But I think,
but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the essence of who I am. I'm beyond Rabbi Teller.
Right.
I am, because of my background, because of my past, because of where I've come from.
You want to help people.
I want to help people who are not necessarily Jews.
Right.
But I've been so focused on the Jewish fight that I've kind of like said, okay, other people can fight that fight. And I honestly do feel that God put me in this situation to be like, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget who you are. Yeah. Don't forget that you still are a guy who's fighting humanity to some degree.
Every fight.
And that was a big kick in the
tuchus.
In the tuchus.
Let me ask you this. What about people, so let's say, I'm just trying to come up with a hypothetical because I want to understand it. Let's say someone that's not Jewish and is not, they're not Jewish, and their immediate circles, their immediate communities aren't necessarily under attack, right? So they're not Jewish, so they're not experiencing the Israel and Iranian conflict as much. Maybe they're not Latino either, so they're not experiencing, maybe they don't even live in Los Angeles. How can a person that isn't involved with a community that is being directly sort of harassed and intimidated, how does someone choose where to put their giving energy if their immediate surroundings aren't necessarily being affected? Like how does a person make that decision? Because there's a lot of problems in the world. Global warming, there's many countries with tons of conflict. There's global, hunger, genocide happening all over the world. And if you really were to take the time to invest yourself in that community and understand what they're going through, it's heartbreaking. So how do you do it? If you're not immediately under attack, or maybe you are, how do you spread that compassion around?
These are great questions.
Because there's so much of it. There's so much injustice in the world. And it's not until we're confronted with that injustice do we really ask these questions. And that's why we're sitting here today and you are grappling with the moral quandary of I have done so much or have attempted to do so much to help my Jewish people and my community in this difficult time that I have lost track of the other atrocities happening in the world.
And maybe God doesn't want me to lose track
Maybe
of
not.
the atrocities, of the other atrocities of what's going
Maybe
on.
not.
And to be aware. And
but if you are someone, let's say someone, this podcast isn't just for Jews. I don't know. What if someone doesn't feel like they're a part of either of those conflicts, but they want to figure out their purpose and how they can take care of a family?
I do think that just, again, and I'm not drawing any Torah sources right now, but I can go off of, based on what I know.
Intuition.
I'm about to sneeze, so it's a sign of a blessing.
Yeah, in Russian we say, "Вот на правду," see? That means for the truth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Does your wife say that too? На правду.
Yeah, da.
Da, okay.
Okay, so we have talked about this, is what do people typically are in search of? What do people typically hoping for? And what are they scratching at? Spending so much time in their day-to-day lives. What are they trying to attain?
Meaning? In some way?
Correct. That's the right answer. Oh. I thought you were going to give the other answer, but you gave the right answer.
Oh, I was just guessing.
No, they're searching for meaning. But what's the counterfeit that they are hoping that they end up going after, which basically
validation? I don't know.
People are in search of validation, but that comes through the means of money. Is that the more fame, fortune, assets that I have, I will receive validation, and therefore I will attain status, and therefore that will, in a way, provide me with meaning. I've now been validated that I've arrived, that I've become successful, that I have made it, and therefore I can feel good about myself. But what we've seen is, and from, again, don't have the sources to prove it, but we see that there's a lot of people who have status, assets, financial assets, who are feeling completely lost, depleted.
No source is necessary. That is evident.
No real meaning, no real purpose, and nothing really grounding them. They're lonely, they're alone, and they're sad. So what do we typically see? People who do achieve status and they figure this out for themselves is that they say, okay, you know what charity can I get involved with? What foundation could I start? How can I give back to something beyond myself? And we see that the more as humanity gives back to something beyond our Dalet Amos, beyond our 6 to 8 feet, then we see that we're making our mark. We're putting a stake in the ground and saying, by me doing this, I've created positive vibes. I've created something tangible. I've put something in the world that could become sustainable, that will go beyond the here and the now, that hopefully could last for another generation, hopefully could last for decades. So when I'm not here, I have done my part to do, it's a Jewish concept, tikkun olam. I've heal the world, make it a better place.
I was wondering when the music would come in.
For you and for me and the entire human race. Michael Jackson. And that's what people are.
A big supporter of Tikkun Olam.
Yes, is that exactly. There are people dying. and to fight hunger, to fight war, to fight poverty is because people want to feel like, okay, I'm making my mark, and therefore I'm going to attain real meaning. So my answer goes back to is that even if the Israel war with Iran or anti-Semitism is not directly your thing, or you're not necessarily involved with the ICE raids and what's taking place in the world, because those aren't directly your families that are experiencing this, but how can you derive more meaning, more purpose, more pleasure, is that this world is big, and this world has a lot of mishappenings and miscomings and shortfalls and things which could be, there could be a lot of additional positivity that could be brought into this world. So somebody needs to say, well, if those two things are not my thing, how can I give? And the more I give, the more I get back in return. So ultimately, at the end of the day, humanity, why we're put here in the world, is that humanity needs to give beyond themselves. We are not meant to be selfish beings. And if we give to something which is greater than ourselves, we as humans will feel naturally and inherently better, and we will inherently be making the world much better.
Here's the thing. This is my concern. In this digital age, the conflict that you give to isn't based on the severity of the conflict. It's based on how salient it is in the news or in media. Because the way that we find out about everything is through the news and the media, in whatever fashion you derive it, whether it's on social media or it's in news or whatever channel you watch. And we all know there's no great cover up here. We all know that news is biased, and there are some channels that are very specifically leaning in one direction, some channels very specifically leaning in another, and there's a few news sources that we just cling onto as the last haven of maybe some sort of real information. But if that's the case, if the conflict that gets the most attention and the most empathy from humans is the conflict that can afford the most publicity,
that's it's a little fake. Phony.
It's tough. It's tough because then it's not
legitimate.
What do you hear about the most? And there are tons of nonprofit organizations constantly trying to raise awareness about conflicts that are outside of your family, outside of your 4 to 8 feet or whatever it must be. So, it's not a system that actually functions in any way that's fair to the severity of whatever conflict it is, in the same way that the justice system doesn't necessarily function in fairness either. If you have money and you can afford a great lawyer, you are more likely to win.
You can stay in this country.
You are more likely to win. And if you don't have a great lawyer, you are less likely to win, even if you aren't the problem. And so I struggle with that a little bit, just from a perspective of there's tons of conflicts that really, truly deserve our attention. And then you have to start weighing the severity of them. Sometimes there's all kinds of stuff. I remember during the pandemic, so much was happening between the protests over racial inequality to the protests surrounding lockdowns and all of that stuff. And I remember there was this one person who was posting a lot about dogs, like the mistreatment of animals in various countries, in America, like the dog breeding farms where they're just breeding these dogs and just trying to make money, and these dogs are living in terrible conditions. And I remember at the time being like, bigger fish to fry, I don't know if the dog thing is a big thing right now. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but I don't know. If I'm a human of compassion with a limitless amount of compassion, which I want to be, I need to hold space for the dogs that are,
and I need to hold space, and I need to hold space for people who
hold space for that.
dogs. And that's really what it comes down to. As I think what's happened is that we as humans, I'm admittedly speaking about myself, is that I have said, well, you're Jewish.
You should be involved in
you're
this.
Jewish. Why aren't you speaking up
Yeah.
about what we're going through? Why are you choosing not to vocalize or address the pain and atrocity that we're going through? Because if I'm not for myself, who will be for me?
Who will be for me?
You're a Jew. You need to step up. But I think I need to acknowledge that if you choose to talk about the dogs, or you choose to talk about whales, or poverty, or poverty
whatever,
in Argentina, and that is the thing that
because you don't know that person's family.
That's the thing that resonates with
Yeah.
you and what your value system is. And yes, even though you're a Jew, it's okay. I've come to the conclusion right here, right now, on camera, that it's okay that your values are different than mine. And it's okay that you choose to vocalize about things which are different than me. And I need to have compassion towards you and say, we're still all humanity.
We don't need to weigh each other's trauma against each other. That's how when minorities start to fight amongst themselves as to who has it worse, the only person that benefits is the oppressor.
They're winning.
They're winning.
And our enemies are looking at us and saying, you schmoes,
Yeah.
you guys are, we got you to fight against each other.
Exactly.
Now guards are down, and now we're going to shoot missiles at you.
Great, yeah.
Or we're going to continue to do anti-Semitism, or
let's have the Jews fight amongst themselves over who is more or less empathetic to the cause.
And we never got to this, but this is not going to bring Mashiach, the savior of the world, of peace, harmony, because we're too busy
arguing
as family
amongst
each other. And
I think that's happening so much right now because we have so much visibility to everyone's trauma that it starts to feel as though we are constantly measuring our own trauma against someone else, trying to understand, well, who has it worse? Who is more justified
or
deserving of people's empathy? I'd say everyone is equally deserving of people's empathy, and we as humans have the right and the ability to go through ebbs and flows of having empathy for different things in our lives as we feel it happen to us and experience things like what you experienced this morning.
And up until this point, I've said what's going on in Israel is more worthy of my attention. More worthy. Exactly what you're saying is more worthy of my attention. And sadly, what's taking place with other people's families, I'm sorry to say this, is not as worthy of me and my attention right now, which is a very backwards, sad, intolerable way of thinking.
I agree.
And I think I needed to go through this to realize that their pain is just as worthy and is just as justified and is just as important, and that I need to be more compassionate about people who are different than me.
And there's no reason, because I think one of the difficult things about it, and one of the reasons that people are not willing to have this realization, is because on the tail end of that realization, they sit and they beat themselves up for not having focused enough on those people's pain, right? You sit and you think, how could I have been so cruel as to not think about their pain before? But we're all human, and we're all struggling and dealing with whatever trauma it is that we're dealing with. I'm also Ukrainian. So on top of being Jewish and worried about that conflict, I have a
Ukrainian,
whole other
Russian
war that I'm also very much thinking about because I do have family there still. And then I live in Los Angeles, and now there's this sort of war happening in our city between the people and ICE and whoever, the powers that be. So it's like I have compassion for all three of those parties, and I can't give that compassion to all three of those families every single day. Because
we'd be overwhelmed.
Have to have compassion
and as we said,
for me,
and we have to focus on our Dalit Amos.
Right.
Otherwise, we would all be,
Right.
We wouldn't be able to do anything in this world.
Right. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying at all times, that you have to. I think if you completely give yourself up to these causes, you don't have the energy to sustain the fight.
To sustain your well-being as well, your fight.
Throughout the fight.
Correct.
Because you have to have
Because
energy to be able to come here and do this podcast and discuss this stuff.
And take care of my wife and take care of my 4
Right.
kids and be a father, be a husband. And there's only so much time during the day. There's only so much money and resources that we can have. If we just had all the money in the world, yeah, you take 100,000, you take 100,000, and you take this and you take this. But we have to say, okay, where do I want to put my energy? Where do I want to put my resources? Where do I want to put my tzedakah? That's going to hopefully, in my mind, by me contributing, is me putting my stake and will hopefully lead to more longevity or more sustainability or more that will fight the good fight.
I mean, I'm walking away from this thinking, give yourself some room to breathe in that striving for empathy, because I think that we can be so hard on ourselves sometimes, and I think other people can be really hard on us sometimes. And every time I see those like your silence is deafening and stuff like that, people need time to process things. People need time to feel through something. Maybe someone doesn't have it in them right now to take on that conflict. You don't know what they're going through.
It also says in the Jewish wisdom, in Pirkei Avot, it says, don't judge somebody until you've been in their shoes.
Exactly.
And
that is empathy.
That is empathy. And we're so quick to judge somebody else, but you don't know how they woke up. You don't know
what they've done.
You don't know if their boss called them
Right.
earlier in the day, laid them off. You don't know if they're experiencing some trauma from their family, anything. And we're so quick to be like, their silence is deafening. They're not speaking up. They're not acting. They're not this. They're not that. And this is where it does come down to, we do need to then realize, okay, it's appropriate for me to focus on my Dalit Amos. If that person is asking me for help, then okay, I can extend beyond my Dalit Amos. What I saw today earlier, essentially a person was calling out for help. He didn't say help me, but he was saying help me as he's being detained. Yeah. And I wasn't necessarily the one going to the police officers and saying, hey, stop.
I don't think that's
not my idea of help.
The guy to do
but
that.
He raised a red flag and put it out there and is saying, Rabbi T, I need you to know what I'm going through right now. I need your awareness. I need your help. I need your compassion. I need your attention right now. And I need to now be aware, okay. And sometimes it's appropriate for me to stay quiet in my own Dalit Amos, worrying about myself and my family so I can stay strong. But then there's times where
you need to extend.
We need to extend. And this was a perfect example of where I needed to extend.
We'll get to the questions another time.
Yeah. So thank you for asking me what took place earlier today.
No, we had to go through it. I think it's so important. And I think this was a really valuable conversation for people to hear, because I think people feel very alone in this sometimes because of the way the internet works and how judgmental and how quick it is to be judgmental. People are so scared to ask these questions and put themselves out there and say, I don't know what conflict to give myself to, and when, and how frequently, and what is the appropriate amount of time to post about this, and what if I'm scared?
And if I don't post, therefore, am I a bad person?
Am I a bad person, or what can I do? Maybe my my support is more silent. It's not outward. I did that show and teller tale about the tzedakah. Sometimes people give silently because they don't want to position themselves or align themselves with anything. They just want to help. Right. And for some people, help looks like sending out a message to the world. That's what help looks like for you. I would say you do that all the time. You are constantly putting out messages of empathy and faith and spirituality into the world. And I know, I've seen it in the 8 years that I've worked with you, how it has raised other people's lives. But some people just don't know. They don't know what their avenue for that help is. And I think that it's so important that we all let people find that avenue, and even more importantly, let that avenue evolve and change as they grow and evolve and change. Because there's a lot of injustice in this world, and there's a lot of us, and we can all help, but it doesn't always have to look the same.
Yeah. Right. Wow.